The job market story is shifting, and the important part is not the headline, it is the transmission. We do not start with fear, and we do not start with forecasts. We start with mechanisms. When hiring slows, layoffs rise, and revisions compress what looked like strength, that is not just a job story. It is a cash flow story. It is a credit story, and eventually it becomes a funding story. The claims circulating right now center on three linked shifts. First, labor quality is weakening under the surface, including a major downward revision to prior job creation and a surge in layoffs. Second, firms are openly signaling structural substitution, not just cyclical trimming, as artificial intelligence and automation begin replacing certain categories of white-collar and logistics work. Third, perception itself is changing, where synthetic content and synthetic workers alter how production and advertising are priced. The question is not whether artificial intelligence will replace everyone. The question is whether labor softening becomes persistent enough to tighten household cash flow. Because when cash flow tightens, credit performance follows. And when credit performance weakens, funding conditions eventually react. That sequence is what moves markets. As of February 2026, we assign roughly a 60% probability that late-cycle compression conditions persist through June 2026, where markets can remain firm even as labor quality deteriorates. We assign roughly a 30% probability that breakdown conditions arrive sooner, driven by credit acceleration rather than a single jobs report. And we assign roughly a 50% probability that a forced liquidity window becomes plausible between June 2026 and December 2026, if labor weakness clusters with refinancing pressure. If you find this type of structured, probability-based analysis useful, consider subscribing. The goal here is not noise. It is to help you see sequence before outcome, so you can interpret signals with more clarity and less emotion. Our confirmations remain mechanical. Hiring rates and continuing claims must deteriorate in a sustained way, not just 1 month of volatility. Credit spreads must widen in a way that rebounds stop working. Funding conditions must show friction, whether in auctions, collateral availability, or liquidity smoothness. If instead hiring stabilizes, spreads remain contained, and funding absorbs issuance without stress, then the narrative remains a narrative and phase pressure relaxes. This is educational analysis, not financial advice. We are mapping probabilities and mechanisms, not making predictions or trade calls. The labor story matters. Artificial intelligence substitution matters. But what matters most is whether labor becomes credit and whether credit becomes funding. That chain is the transmission, and we stay disciplined enough to let confirmations, not headlines, tell us when the sequence truly turns.